My wife and I have been married for more than 20 years, and we have built a life together full of love growth and shared memories. At 43, I am proud of the family. We have raised my wife and recently turned 40. We've got 2 teenagers, Darcy a bright 16-year-old, and John, our curious 14-year-old. When we exchanged vows, I had just finished my degree, and was in her final semester. I currently work as an engineering manager for a mid-sized corporation in the city, and on the other hand has established herself a capable parallel in a reputable law firm. We prioritize staying active by going to the gym on a regular basis and participating in outdoor activities such as hiking whenever the weather permits. My name is Michael Williams, and I'd like to think I've provided a wonderful life for my family, but I've never considered myself a romantic. I take satisfaction in keeping and happy. Our physical connection continues to be a source of closeness and joy on a continuous basis, sustaining our relationship even after 2 decades, since beauty regularly attracts attention, especially when she dresses up for an evening out. Our children are a source of great pride. Both perform, academically retain friendships, and are highly valued by their peers. I've always been involved in their development, guiding them through homework, cheering them on at games, and planning family excursions. Being present in their lives has always been one of my core beliefs as an engineering manager. My responsibilities are more focused on project management than on detailed tasks. This flexibility helps me to enjoy my weekends and avoid late evenings, as employment occasionally requires overtime due to high-pressure cases. Although this is rare, our lives felt steady and satisfying. Generally, but beneath the surface, undercurrents of trouble were beginning to ripple. Unbeknownst to me, a storm was forming in the form of Rick Walker, a confident, aggressive attorney who had recently joined N's firm. Rick was the embodiment of self-assurance. His sculpted physique reflected his attention to fitness, and his brazen personality emanated an almost indestructible air. I initially met Rick at one of Anne's office events. Throughout the evening, he flirted with her openly when I mentioned my concerns thereafter, and disregarded them as immature, and said that everything was harmless fun at home. I tried to explain that while I trusted her, his actions violated our relationship. Though she didn't quite agree, she was arrogant enough to diffuse the situation, and life swiftly returned to normal for 6 months. Everything appeared normal until and became absorbed in a significant case that had consumed 2 years of her professional life. As it neared its culmination, Anne's work hours increased. She remained committed to remaining in touch every evening, and I had no reason to suspect her honesty. However, what began as casual banter with Rick had gradually turned into something more serious without my knowing. When the matter was resolved and firm, prepared a weekend getaway. At a senior partner's cabin, I had already visited the spot and was familiar with both the scenery and her hosts, Chuck and Lou, while Darcy and John were mature enough to manage on their own for the weekend, and Icos to visit the cottage nestled Inature, which provided a gorgeous respite. The evening began smoothly, however. Rick's continuous attention to and did not go unnoticed. I chose to ignore it, not wanting to ruin the weekend as we gathered around the fire pit. My irritability persisted, but I refrained from addressing it. I felt drained. When I retired to bed the next morning, I awoke early to the aroma of fresh coffee. I quietly got out of bed and joined Chuck and Lou in the kitchen to help with breakfast preparations as others arrived. Noticed Rick had taken my place next to Anne when I asked him to move, and shocked me by recommending I find another seat. Despite my disappointment, I agreed and headed outside to collect my thoughts. The group's uneasy glances during this exchange stayed with me all day and seemed glued to Rick's side, whether on a hike, a swim at the lake, or just chatting. Every attempt I made to connect with her was met with a light-hearted dismissal, leaving me feeling increasingly alienated. By the evening, my patience had worn thin, and I was ready to set a limit. I took the seat near, and before Rick could their salting tension put a PA over the meeting, leaving everyone noticeably uneasy and frustrated. I excused myself, early, and went to our room to pack foreign early. Departure as I was cleaning up in the kitchen and came in and asked to talk. Her timing was somewhat comical. Given her complete disregard for me throughout the day, she started slowly, her cheeks flaming as she said, and assured me that she had never been unfaithful, and had no intention of doing, so yet she admitted to a simmering sexual tension with Rick, a revelation that hit me like a thunderbolt, intensifying my sense of betrayal. That is why I must be honest with you. I will spend the night with him. I wanted to tell you ahead of time so it wouldn't feel like a betrayal. There is no sneaking. Sneaking around here, I'm not that type of person. There will be no hiding or lying. This is intolerable. Allow me to be clear, I cannot and will not consent to. This, our connection, has always been genuine, and I need to protect it. If you do this, you will face actual consequences. I will not endorse this decision if you love me. You will understand that this is only one time. I need to figure out where this is going. For my own clarity tomorrow, I'll be entirely dedicated to you again, but a day. I have to do this if you loved me. You wouldn't even contemplate it. The thought itself is awful. Do not do this to us, and I am imploring you, Michael, I hear you. But this is what I've decided. I'll come back in the morning. We can chat then. Let's talk about it on the journey. Home tomorrow, she simply walked out of the room. 20 years of marriage had disintegrated. She assumed I'd wait with arms open, ready to forgive her and carry on as if nothing had happened, but she was mistaken. We have discussed loyalty several times previously. Our friends had cheated. We made a mutual promise, no excuses, no exceptions. It was a line that could not be broken. It didn't matter whether she told me in advance, it was still a betrayal. I poured the drink I was carrying in the sink. I didn't need liquid. Courage for what happened next. I went upstairs and began. Gathering my possessions, I left her belongings where they were. She would have to deal with them after turning out the lights. I sat in the bed for an hour passed before I heard the others return to the house and settle into their rooms. I waited another 30 minutes to make sure. The coast was clear before slipping out softly with my luggage in hand and closing the door behind me. The night air was quiet, and I moved silently in automobile. Parked far away, began gently. It was just after 2 a.m. When I turned into our driveway, the house lights were still on, indicating that one of the kids was awake. I grabbed my luggage and entered. Sure enough, both children were watching a movie. Dad, what are you doing? Here, I thought you weren't coming home. Until tomorrow. Darcy inquired. J.N. looked over curious. Yeah, where is Mom? I exhaled. Your mom is still at the cabin. I said, she is sharing his bed with another person. It was brutal. Yes, but they acquired the truth. They deserved to know what was going on. Could I have put it more delicately, probably, but I wasn't concerned about softening the hit. What do you mean? Sheck cheating on you? Darcy inquired, her voice increasing in wrath. That's exactly what I mean. I said, she told me she was going to be with someone, said. Tonight I didn't stick around to see it happen. I packed and returned home, leaving her to figure out how to go back on her own. We talked for a while before I carried my suitcase to the spare room. I spent the next hour moving my possessions from the bedroom we shared to what would now be my personal area. The guest room was adequately pleasant, with its own bathroom and a decent bed exhausted. I collapsed on it. I fell asleep early in the morning. My phone began ringing continually. Anne's name appeared. Over the screen, I forwarded it to voicemail. She had already left numerous messages and texts. Curiosity got the best of me, and I checked them. The initial messages were casual, asking where I was and mentioning breakfast. Then there were worried questions. About why I had left and where I had gone. Finally, they became enraged and demanded I return to fetch her. The final one threatened that she'd find her own way home, and make me pay for leaving her. Behind realizing I was completely awake, I got up, showered, and dressed. I walked downstairs to be ready for what I knew was coming. The children had already awoken. I warned them to avoid the upcoming clash. They laughed it off, but I could see they weren't pleased with their mother either when the front door slammed open. I knew she was here. "Where the hell have you been?" she shouted. I remained calm. "Well," I said, "if you are looking for your dignity, I believe you left it in Rick's bed last night." Her cheeks flushed deep crimson, and for a brief moment I worried if she'd pass out before her. Fury erupted. "How could you leave me like that and make me beg for a ride home? Do you realize how embarrassing it was?" she yelled. "I was going to make things right with you today, but you have ruined everything." I didn't flinch. Embarrassed was nothing compared to how humiliated I felt, knowing you were with another man. And there's no way to make things right. After what you did, you are currently damaged goods. How could you suggest that? "I am your wife," she cried. "No," I replied, forcefully maybe. "On paper, but my wife would not have done it. My wife vanished the instant you made that decision. But I told you I was open about it. It's not infidelity. If I'm up front," she argued, "let me be clear." I added my voice, firm. "Did you sleep with someone other than your husband last night?" "Yes, I did. I warned you I was going to." "Did you allow him to get intimate with you?" Of course, she replied as if it were clear. Why else would I spend the night with him? "Then you cheated. Whether you told me or not is irrelevant. You did not seek my input. You made a decision and dismissed my objections. That is betrayal. End of story. If you genuinely cared about me, you'd let this go," she said. "If your love was genuine, we could get past this." Such a foolish thought. If she'd ever truly loved me, she wouldn't have considered being with someone else without saying anything. I turned aside and went to the garage to work on my 1969 Novathet automobile. Began life with a tiny 6-cylinder engine and a 3-speed manual transmission. I replaced the engine with a small block V8 and modified the transmission to a 4-speed these days. Automotive fanfare all about restomods, which include retrofitting historic vehicles with modern computer-driven engines. Yes, they get greater horsepower and better fuel economy. I will not dispute, but I prefer the old ways. Modern engines are over-lying on computers, and maintaining them requires an IT degree. Give me a classic setup any day with older engines. You can do the work yourself, run the wiring, make a few adjustments, and you're good to go. However, with modern systems, you must install electronic components, connect a controller, and then pay a professional a small fortune to program it all before the engine will start. No thanks. Throughout the months that followed and made numerous attempts to get me to talk to her, I was not interested. She even sneaked into my room late at night on several occasions. I'd expected this and changed the locks as far as I was concerned. We were simply two individuals living together for the sake of the children. Why didn't I simply file for divorce? The solution was straightforward. The children, the prospect of being reduced to a part-time father was intolerable. I couldn't bear the thought of being apart from them. Also, John had just 3 years till he graduated high school and left for college, and eventually sought to involve the kids in her efforts to get me to engage with her, which backfired miserably. The kids were unhappy, especially when she attempted to portray me as the evil guy Darcy was, ready to call her out. "Mom, Dad has never said anything negative about you to us," she remarked firmly, "but you've criticized him more than once. Don't blame him for our feelings. That's on you." Those were difficult days for the Williams family for months later, and tried a new tactic while the kids weren't home. She dressed provocatively, sometimes in lingerie that left little to the imagination, in the hopes of seducing me. I'll confess the temptation was there, and is a beautiful woman. But I resisted her betrayal was not something I could just overlook. 6 months after, everything had disintegrated, she made her most daring move yet. One evening she stood in front of me wearing a silky black nightgown and said, "Frankly, I can't do this anymore. Michael, I need you. It's been 6 months." She explained, her voice shaking. "I need you to come into bed and make love to me." My response was cold. "Why don't you phone your lover?" Instead, her voice trembled as she rejected it. "I do not have a lover. I have not been with anyone since that night. I'm asking you, Michael, and if you refuse, I will find someone who will." The ultimatum was obvious. I gazed at her steadily. "Just make sure you take them. Somewhere else, do not bring anyone into this house. Go to their house, hotel, or car, but not here." Her face collapsed and she raced out of the room in tears. Actions have consequences, and hers had brought us here. "I do not want anyone else," she wept as she departed. "I only want you for some. My refusal may appear harsh. She is beautiful after all, and it has been months, but every time I thought about it all I could see was her in another man's arms. Her co-workers laughing behind my back, that vision was enough to quench any yearning, regardless of how gorgeous. She was betrayal, eclipsed everything. A week later, on a calm Saturday night, I was sitting in the living room with a drink of scotch and soda, reading a book, and emerged at the foot of the stairs, dressed for a gorgeous evening out in tight jeans and high heels, fine jewelry. She pleaded. It was a look that reminded me of the parties we used to attend together. "Michael, I need you please come upstairs and join me. If you refuse, I'll find someone who will." I put down the book and looked at her. "You look fantastic, and I'm sure you'll have no trouble finding someone to spend the night with. But if you do, keep in mind that it will be an open marriage if you sleep with someone, else I will consider both of us free. To see other people, that is not what I want," she responded, her voice rising with fury. "I want you. I'm offering myself to you, but you keep turning me down. Why, if you don't want me anymore, simply say, 'So do you desire a divorce?'" "No," I responded, calmly. "What I want is the woman I married, the one who loved and remained faithful to me. That is not who you are anymore. You broke my trust that night, and I don't know how to regain it. I vowed to be faithful." She replied, anxiously, "I will never hurt you again." Words are meaningless after what you've done. I said that actions matter. Tears ran down her face. "How long will you be punishing me? What can I do to solve this?" I exhaled, the weight of everything pressed down. "There is nothing you can do because it is already broken. My priority now is to make things work for the children. Once John graduates, we'll part ways. Until then, we are just housemates." Looked devastated. "If this is the case, I will file for divorce myself. You are welcome to do that." I said, "But the kids are old enough to select where they want to live, and I am confident they will choose me." She stared at me for quite some time before walking away. The decision was definitive. Trust was lost, and no apology or promise could bring it back. The harm had been done, and the route forward was clearly obvious. The first option was straightforward. We could complete our divorce. The alternative, to quickly transforming our responsibilities into part-time parents, was unconventional. Continue to live together while giving each other entire independence. This would assure that the children had both parents at home. Even if our marriage existed only in name, we'd live under the same roof but have completely separate lives. Otherwise, dating other people was allowed as long as we committed not to bring anyone back to the house. True to the agreement, she dressed up that evening, meticulously did her makeup, and went out in the meantime. I began navigating the world of dating myself within a month. This became our new, normal, polite, but distant. We coexisted as pleasant roommates in Tenton. Co-parenting outwardly, we still appeared to be a family. Social commitments frequently required us to attend gatherings together to keep appearances. However, it did not take long for coworkers to put things together. I started meeting ladies at work, and she started dating males. She met through hers. She would occasionally try to reignite our spark, and to my chagrin, I sometimes gave in. She remained as attractive as ever, and after a few drinks, my resolve faltered only slightly. Even then it was entirely sexual. With no emotional connection, the partnership eventually came to an end as it had to. Is this truly the end? And inquired her voice wavering as I loaded another box into the back of my truck. Yes, this is it. I confirmed. Thank you for 20 amazing years, she murmured humbly. I corrected it. 23 years, I know. She muttered, her eyes welling with tears. 3 years have gone by. John had moved into his college dorm, and Darcy was preparing for her first year of university. The house had been sold, and we were both packing up the vestiges of our shared history. Our divorce was practically complete, awaiting only the judge's signature. We had divided our assets equally to ensure the children's college finances remained intact. As she packaged up souvenir ears, she murmured softly, I still love you. You know, I know. I responded equally somber, I'm sorry. Me too, she murmured, tears flowing down her cheeks. Will you call or visit me? No pressure, just stay in touch. Although the animosity I previously had toward her had dissipated, and the profound love we unshared was gone. I couldn't bring myself to hate her in many respects. She'd become a friend. We'd always have a connection through our children, and, to be honest, she still held an obvious charm. Sure, we can do it, I said. Birthday, graduations, weddings, and grandchildren would bring us together regardless. The children forgave, and for her past actions, albeit their relationship with her was never the same. She purchased a modest 3-bedroom apartment for their trips, while I moved into a tiny house with land and a workshop. Living in the same tiny town meant that our paths constantly crossed. We continued in touch, occasionally meeting for dinner or drinks, and she hinted at reconciliation. I was aware that it was unlikely. She finally entered a couple serious partnerships, whereas I enjoyed my single life for myself. Marriage has accomplished its purpose of raising children and providing companionship, with the former finished, and the latter no longer a priority. I saw no reason to marry again 5 years after our divorce, and invited me to lunch. I have a significant favor to ask, she said. I understand if you say no, but please consider it. Go ahead, I said, putting my drink down. Got a hunch this was more than just a casual supper. Glancing around, I asked, where's your boyfriend? Doesn't he mind if you meet me? She smiled. Andrew knows. He actually urged me to ask if you want to talk. You and happy to do so. Okay, I'm listening, I said. Michael Andrew proposed, and I answered, good. On you, I asked, do you love him? Are you prepared to move forward? I'll never fully forget us admitted, but I've come to terms with our ending. Andrew and I are happy. I love him, and I'm ready to start this new chapter. So what's the favor? I asked. If you're looking for my blessing, you already have it. She hesitated before saying, I want you to walk me down the aisle. I was taken aback. What? I want you to give me away. At me wedding. Ash, she repeated. Anne's. Most ex-wives don't even invite their ex-husbands to the wedding, let alone ask them to play a role in the ceremony. I said. Still processing the request. I know, but hear me out, she said, explaining her reasoning. You were the most significant man in my life. Aside from my father, who's no longer here, you were my last great love. This gesture would symbolize passing that part of my life to Andrew, showing everyone we've moved forward as friends, though unconventional. Her logic carried a peculiar clarity. I met Andrew for drinks that evening to hear his perspective. He confessed to initial reservations, but had come to support averse reasoning. I even consulted our kids, seeking their opinions. Ultimately, I agreed the wedding was as unconventional as the request, yet deeply meaningful. When asked who gives this woman away, I responded her family and her ex-husband. The reception was lively, and my role in the ceremony was well received. A few women even approached me, intrigued by the unusual dynamic. As I watched Anne embark on her new journey, I felt a profound sense of closure. Our story had reached its conclusion, but the threads of our shared past had been delicately woven into her new beginning. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.